Hi, I'm Caroline at Rancher. Welcome to this brand new series of interviews with our fantastic customers and users. We are really fortunate today. We've got Zach Dunn from Optoro, who's taken some time out of his busy schedule to talk to us about how he's working with Rancher. Thanks very much for taking the time, Zach.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So right off the bat, Optoro, for me, is one of the most interesting companies we work with. It would be great to get a bit of background about what Optoro does, your role in the company. That would be great. Thanks.
Optoro is really focused on removing waste from the reverse logistics problem space. And now those are a lot of words, and and really, I'll be honest, I wouldn't have known what any of them meant until I got here. But basically, forward logistics is a really well-solved problem. Retailers know how to take a bunch of new products and get them in the hands of consumers very quickly and very efficiently. The problem is when that consumer gets that product and they decide to return it, then that's a different problem, because now you're not dealing with 1,000 new iPhones, you're dealing with onesie twosies, and the retailers don't have a great pattern for this. And the traditional old school pattern would be someone go, they return it. Of course, the retailer wants to keep a happy customer, maybe wants to sell them a new product in place. They would take that return, maybe throw it in the corner. And really what would happen at that point is nothing. The corner would fill up, and when the corner filled up, they'd send it back to a regional warehouse. When the regional warehouse filled up, they might send it to a larger distribution center. And eventually what would happen is maybe that iPhone that got returned would end up in a big old pile somewhere, and that pile would get liquidated. And a liquidator would come in and they'd say, I don't know, we got some iPhones in here. That looks pretty good. Looks like there's a bunch of junk. They'd take it. They'd probably give them pennies on the dollar for it. And then they'd sort through it, throw some of it out, start divvying it up, sell some of it to sort of the thrift shops or eBay or something. And they'd go through that cycle kind of all the way back down to the consumer. The problem here is that it's a terrible return for the retailer. It's not a very good experience to the customer, the consumer, because the consumer could be using that iPhone for the last 9 months. And realistically, it's awful for the environment. Every time you've got a touch or shipping, there's a huge carbon footprint associated with these things. And oftentimes these are just being thrown out. So just really not the best story for the environment. So what we do is we help those retailers optimize their returns logistics experience and really remove as many touches as possible, whether that's working in a store, working in their warehouse, working in our facilities. However we can, we help to optimize those clients' returns logistics experience. And then in my role here, I have two roles. First, I run the teams that help make the blinky lights. And then as the CISO, I help the teams protect the blinky lights. So we make sure the blinky lights don't get stolen that we make as well. And that's it. That's basically what I do. Hopefully that explains what Optoro does and what I do.
Great company. Really interesting what you do. Thanks for that summary. So thinking about containers then. So why did you come to containers in the first place? And why Kubernetes?
Yeah, so we're not a young startup. We've been around for a while. And part of that journey was starting off in VMs. And then slowly we started, we heard about this Docker thing and we started trying Docker. We had a really long spell, and we still are, on a container platform called Joyent. Smart Data Center. And with Smart Data Center, we started getting the opportunity to actually just build and deploy Dockers. And this, we had been moving into this sort of service-oriented architecture and breaking our application into services. And so when we were able to also build those services as artifacts and start deploying those artifacts onto our platform, it was just a watershed moment for us, because then all of a sudden we really got the ability to turn around and deliver discrete units of functionality in these real atomic bits. So we ended up with Dockers, and we ended up sort of with mimicking a PaaS a little bit, right? We were running Consul, we were running HashiCorp, we were using Terraform for some orchestration, Chef for some orchestration as well. And we realized we were kind of like poking in from the side and poking in from this way, and then doing some coordination inside of the container. And at a certain point, when we had a number of these Dockers running services, we realized we're just kind of mimicking a PaaS. And what we probably need to do is actually realize if we just shouldn't embrace a PaaS and work towards having our applications baseline against something that's very well understood. So at that point, we looked around the market, and this was about 1.5 years ago, and Kubernetes was just eating the world, and I still think it is. And we just decided, you know what, this is what we're going to move to. This is what makes sense. We're kind of making up half of these anyway. So let's start getting those Dockers to launch on top of a Kubernetes stack instead of on top of essentially a VM stack.
Okay, interesting. And so, at what point did you come across Rancher? Had you had a look around at what else was out there at the same time, or was it just kind of a natural progression to Rancher straight away?
Yeah, so it's interesting. What ended up happening was we started looking around, and the first question I think everybody kind of gets hit with is like, well, where, the first thing you get told, let me put it that way, is Kubernetes is really hard. And Kubernetes is so hard. You don't want to manage it yourself. You should pay somebody to manage it for you. Just use EKS, GKE, whatever, to manage it for you. And I think that's true. I also think that realistically, you have to understand the tools you're using. I'm a big proponent of open source. The company has been built off of open source. And if you don't really understand the tools you're using, it's going to be really hard to deliver value. And in my position in sort of the infrastructure side of the world, if we're not really understanding the tools we're using, we can't really say that they're going to work in production. We can't guarantee that sort of deliverability. Because to be fair, our customers don't care how well we develop. Our customers don't care how fast we get things to production. They care about production. They care production is stable. They care that the features are there. They can care that it's responsive. The whole back end could be on fire. They would not care. That's simply just not their concern. That's just inside baseball, and we all need to admit it to ourselves. So realistically, when we looked at Kubernetes, we were like, man, this is complicated. There's a learning curve. It's a new technology. And we started spinning up Minikube, and we realized, it's not that complicated. There's certainly different nomenclature, and there's a certain amount of spin up. But what we saw were there are operational challenges, right? It's not the day one challenges you care about. Those are fairly inconsequential. You can run Kind, you can run Minikube, you can run K3S and have this running on your machine in 20 minutes. Again, just like development, that doesn't pay my mortgage. So we really don't, so it doesn't count, right? And so what we needed to know is that as we went to production with Kubernetes, we'd be in a position where everyone would actually be able to still pay their mortgage. So what we decided was this was also a great opportunity to sort of start to enforce some more best practices. And we wanted to be able to say, no matter where we were in the world, we were going to be able to have this single universal API in Kubernetes. And that gets trickier if you're looking at like sort of an EKS and a GKE, because now you're starting to have to deal with some of the differences between those. And then you are kind of back to where we were with our older platform. Like we're going to be kind of orchestrating some stuff from the outside and some stuff from the inside. And, oh, this is a little different over here in this world. So we got to manage those changes. And what we found was having that Rancher sort of proxy is almost what we think of it for RBAC and for just straight communication and cluster management, just really meant that we were able to fulfill that promise of really cloud computing, right? Which is turning computers into utilities. Clouds are utilities. We should treat them as such. We should find the ones that are in the right spot for us. They have the right pricing for us. They give us the right performance. That could be bare metal. That could be GKE in one world, Alibaba in another. But we can't sacrifice the fact that we still have to manage them. And that management aspect and that universal management aspect and really lowering the cognitive load of interacting with our production environment was huge to us. It just could not be every time we add a new world into our universe, the cognitive load couldn't just escalate dramatically. And so we found Rancher. We looked at a couple other management solutions along the way, but really kind of settled on Rancher pretty quickly, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And from there, that's where we've been for about, I think, the last 18 months.
Interesting. And so what are you running in production right now in Rancher, and kind of what's the trajectory for the business? What's the next stage?
Yeah, so right now we've migrated about 50% of our production applications over. All of our, we call them kind of infrastructure services are completely migrated over. It's easy for us to move over because we're the ones that control it. So like logging, Prometheus, we run a fairly large Elasticsearch stack running Elk. So we've got our logging clusters over. We've got our Prometheus clusters are all cut over. All of our CI/CD is all done via a combination of GitLab. And so we actually run our GitLab runners on premise because we have extra hardware to do that. So we have a cluster that just runs GitLab runners all day. So all of that CD is being done in Kubernetes at this point. Our sandbox and staging environments, we're probably more like 60-70% migrated over. And then our production environment is about 50% migrated over. And in our world, that's mostly Ruby on Rails apps with stateful backend services. So we are a little aggressive there that we're running stateful services on top of our Kubernetes clusters. But again, our approach to this has been through all of our partners, Rancher, whomever. We really treasure open source, and we can see exactly what these things are doing. And having the visibility and just being a really single pane of glass to kind of drill in and look at what's going on has really given us the confidence to take things like stateful applications and run them in our Kubernetes clusters.
Okay, and what's kind of in the pipeline for 2020 then for Optoro? What's coming down the line? What are you excited about? And how do you see your relationship with Rancher changing over the coming months and years?
Yeah, so I think for 2020, 2020 for us is really the year that we put to bed our old platform, and we've kind of finished that migration. And then, the sort of the nice thing that really happens there is we've been living in this world where we're straddling two horses, and I hate it. It's not a pleasant place. You always have to question yourself, where am I looking for this? Where is this thing living? It takes up a lot of headspace. So as we kind of finish that migration up, we actually have a little surplus capacity, and then we'll be able to kind of slosh that back over. We'll be able to start building really ephemeral developer environments. So this is something we're really excited about, because for right now, what we're doing is we have a very stringent and strict GitOps sort of pattern for deploying into our Rancher clusters. So in GitLab, you would work on your code that would trigger a CI/CD build. The CD portion is really just updating a repo in GitLab, which would then have Argo, which lives in each one of our clusters, see that and say, oh, I'm going to do this deploy for you. This is great for production. It's great for staging. You have these very clear boundaries. You always know what's what. We can rebuild the world very easily because we can just throw a new Argo in that cluster and it goes, oh, all this stuff's missing. Let me just bring it all in. And it works very well. The problem is for developers who are working across multiple services, who are working with sort of integration environments. This is a little trickier. They just want to be able to kind of deploy stuff. They just want to be able to kind of go. So what we're in the process of doing is really taking that CI cluster and making it a dev cluster. And that cluster will become, through Rancher projects, we'll map those straight to teams, set resource limits on each one. And then as we've moved forward with our own environment, we've taken all of our Helm charts, put those into a Helm chart museum. And then what we're doing is we're letting them launch those as Rancher apps. So the idea would be, as a project, as a team, I can go into this dev cluster. I can go into, my team space, and I can launch the services I need right inside of that project on whatever version I want, overriding whatever variables I need, dev around all I want, play around. QAs can do it too. Burn it down. We can have a fridge clean out every Friday, and we can just burn down that environment. So that's super exciting to me. Because I think we'll kind of be fulfilling both sides of the contract at that point. We have these very repeatable, understood paths to understood environments like QA and staging and production. And then we also are just kind of saying, like, guys, you don't have to run this all on your laptop. Like, this is a service-oriented architecture. You're going to kill yourself trying to do all this locally. Go at it if you want to mock it all out. But there are times when they're just that's a little higher burden, and we're going to be able to offer that service going forward. So I'm super excited about that. I think the other thing that's really exciting that Rancher is starting to pick up on, and sort of the theme of this, like, more than management, but also single pane of visibility into your Kubernetes clusters, is the security aspect. So seeing sort of the SIS standards coming into Rancher is really exciting. I want to be able to see more of that in the future, more of the understanding that, like, hey, it's not just about building and configuring and setting, and now hey, go to town. But it's about running, building, securing, and iterating from there. And knowing that things have drifted or they haven't drifted. I'm really excited to see where Submariner ends up. I'd like to see if that can be something that just kind of gets, one sort of push button. Let me link these two clusters together. You're done. And I think there's a lot of real opportunities there for Rancher to kind of be that glue on top of really multiple providers, right? Because again, if we can step back and say, our universal API is going to be Kubernetes, we're going to treat all of the metal, wherever it is in the world, as just another Kubernetes endpoint. Having a central management for that is just really, really critical. And being able to have visibility through that central management interface is going to be really critical. And so what we really start to say then is we're going to say, this is how we link all of these utility computing together, and how we manage this portfolio of clusters. And because really, again, this is all inside baseball, right? Our clients would not care if this ran off a spreadsheet on my boss's iPhone. They just wouldn't care, as long as it was delivering the value. So taking that back into our own world, we need to deliver the value of those clusters. And so a lot of this becomes about cost management, security, access control, performance, stability, failover, DR, all the just boring engineering work that you have to do to build enterprise production software.
Thank you, Zach. That was really interesting. I love hearing your story. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. And thank you to everybody who's listened to Zach today. Join us again. And if you need any more information about Rancher, then visit our website at www.rancher.com. Thank you.